Richard Prosser.
Mr. Chairman, I find myself in the curious position of agreeing with almost everything which the members on the government benches are saying about this issue and disagreeing with them on what they propose as the outcome and solution to this bill process. The High Country is an iconic landscape, and it is a fragile landscape, as the Greens have noted. And there is, as some members on the opposition side have said, a perception amongst many in the public that this landscape is off limits, is out of the preserve of ordinary people. Well, that's just simply not true. I think if we look at what the High Country actually is, it's the quintessential centre of New Zealand's image. But it doesn't exist in isolation. And if we go back to, as Mr Ardern said, say 1650, as a starting point for assessing the value of that land, essentially the value of that land has not changed since 1650. And if European colonisation had not occurred in New Zealand, that land would probably still look like it did. But European colonisation did occur. The white man did come here, and he did bring animals, and he did bring gorse, and he brought blackberry, and he brought hyraceum, and all those things would have invaded that high country had it not been for the fact that it was protected and guarded and looked after by the farmers. Now, because these are huge tracts of land and valuable tracts of land, valuable in many senses, there's a perception, I think, amongst some, particularly on the political left, that the people who farm them are very wealthy people. And they're not, for the most part. There are farmers on essentially welfare in this country. The land that they are farming the position is very tenuous. That land does not produce a great deal, and it wouldn't produce anything if it was not being maintained. It would not produce anything if the pests were not kept under control, if the rabbits weren't kept under control, the gorse, the blackberry, etc., etc., etc. There is, I think, a perception that if you took the farmers out of the high country, there's a perception amongst some people that that land would simply stay as it has been for the last 150 years. But it's only been in that condition for the last 150 years because it's been maintained that way by farmers and by the operation of farming, including the tussock. That's right. The tussock is a fragile thing, but it works with sheep. Now, if we take the farmers out of this equation and we don't alternatively put something else back, such as extra resourcing for the Department of Conservation, that land will suddenly go to rack and ruin. It will happen very quickly, and it will stop being an iconic landscape. What we need to do is accept the reality that this landscape has been created by 150 years of farming. Farming is not alien to this landscape. Farming is what has maintained it. The value of this land to the country is enormous. We can't put a dollar value on the tourism, on the iconic imagery value of that land. What we can say is that in order to keep taking value out of that land, we need to keep putting the maintenance into it. And the only way effectively that we can do that is by putting resourcing in. And the best resourcing, the way that resourcing works best, is to leave it to the farmers. Now, you can say that farmers may enjoy access to landscapes and so forth that other people don't. That's simply not true. I mean, I can say to this House that in more than 30 years of tramping and hunting, I've never been denied access to a farmer's land. All you have to do is go and ask. And the same is essentially true on pretty much any conservation land. There's plenty of places in the conservation estate where you can't go without a permit. You can't go at certain times of the year. It costs you to go in different places. So there's really no difference there. I think what we need to do is recognise that the system that we've had for the last 100-ish years is not broken, doesn't need fixed. I agree with everything which the members on the government side have been saying about the realities of farming, about the isolation, the harsh conditions that people have to put up with. Living in remote places, you don't have necessarily access to continuous electricity supplies, you don't have broadband, you don't have cell phone coverage, you don't have all these things which people living in sort of splendid isolation in the cities, looking at the high country thinking these people have got something that we haven't. You don't have access to all those things. You quite often have to make your own power. The town is 3 hours away across gravel roads. These are all realities of people living in the high country. So to say that they're getting something for nothing really isn't true. What they're getting is something that would be worth nothing if they weren't farming it. And getting very little in return would be getting nothing in return if it weren't for the fact that the rents are as low as they are. And in many cases, according to the reports that have been done, they're actually still too high. Mr. Chairman, I think the position of New Zealand First can be summed up by the report of the Accord Chair, Jonathan Wallace, back in 2009, when he said that the process simply reaffirms the process used for setting rents since 1948. Mr Chair.
Ian McKelvey.
Thank you, Mr Chair.